just about 1 more minute. Not too much longer. Thank you. Hope you're all doing well out there. Welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. Did I already say that? Anyways, got a really good one for you today. And it's an out-of-body experience. The person's name is Kevin Roth. When I think of that, I think of The Godfather. Your father did business with Hyman Roth. He liked Hyman Roth, but he never trusted Hyman Roth. Anyways, so yes, happy Father's Day to the dads out there. And this is one hell of a life script, and it's wild. Just from the beginning to end, and it's interesting, really, really interesting. So let's hop right into it. We're going to be going over 2 videos today. This is one that he did on his own channel, and then he went out onto JeffMara's podcast as well and did another an interview, which is also really good. So this is like the first 20 minutes minus commentary will be him just telling his story in a very condensed version, but then later on there's the more in-depth one that he did with Jeff, and I think they're both worth listening to, and we're going to go over both. But if you're short on time today or when you're watching the replay, definitely at least watch the first segment. All right, so let's get going.
I wanted to talk to you today about an experience I had, which I've never spoken about publicly, and it was suggested that I make a video about it, and so now seemed to be the best time. It's about something called an OBE, which is called an out-of-body experience. A lot of people have heard of an NDE, which is a near-death experience where the person dies, usually in a hospital or something, and they leave their body and they have an experience with loved ones over in heaven or wherever you want to call it. And then they come back and they talk about it. And these have been documented by scientists and doctors. There's tens of thousands of these things that have happened, so they're not that unusual. But what I had was an OBE, which is an out-of-body experience that was a little bit different. I didn't die, but I had a very strange experience and kind of a strange life ever since. So I'm going to tell you all about it and a few stories, and then if you have any questions about it, you can reach me at the link below the video. The reason I'm making this video is because it has a lot to do with what I do now as a teacher, and that'll be further explained in this little video. So the OBE happened when I was probably about 4 or 5 in Philadelphia, where I was living. And the experience was that I sensed sort of like a bird's eye view, not really being in my body, but that there was a larger presence. There was something that was not separate from me, certainly bigger than me, but part of me. And it was very real. It was more real than life on this earth. And it gave me the impression that this life was really just a dream. But in this particular experience, or one similar like it around the same time, because I had a couple of them, I was shown a vision of what my life would be like. And one of the things I saw was that there was going to be a lot of ups and downs, that I would also be kind of well known, and that I would end up being a teacher of something very unusual and would leave an impression of these teachings on the planet when I finally died. So from the get-go, I never felt like this life was real. I felt like a fish out of water, that someone had dumped me into some sort of a school that I didn't want to be in. I wanted out. I kind of still want out. But that this was very confusing because I was living sort of in this dream, but didn't feel like it was real. And I felt that way my whole life. Of course, I thought I was alone in this. I'm not. But as a young kid, I did. I also had an unusual talent for playing the piano by ear at the age of 5, where I could hear a melody and then just play it back. And at 13, when my mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack, I ran into a girl by the name of Anne, who played an instrument called the mountain dulcimer. And she was also involved in Sufi mysticism. And I couldn't even tell you why I was at this party, except that everything's probably predestined. And I met her, and I knew immediately when I saw the dulcimer that that was going to be my life. And I kind of followed her.
Okay, so clearly, right away we see, this is destined. He knew he was put in a scenario where he ends up at a party and the instrument. I mean, it's boom.
To learn about Sufi mysticism at the age of 13. Just bizarre in its own way. The other little thing I want to tell you, which I'll talk about further in this video, is that I had an obsession with Peter, Paul, and Mary and Joni Mitchell.
And that gets crazy too. He had an obsession. Mind you, what is he, like 13, 14 when he's talking about this part, this period in his life?
My generation listened to rock and roll, but there was something about Peter, Paul, and Mary which ended up playing a big role in my life. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyway, my life rolled along, not particularly happily. My mom died. My father remarried a little too soon, but that's what he chose, and that was the path that I was on. And I'd only played the dulcimer about 2 years, and I got a record deal with Folkway Records, and all those records are now, I made 10 of them. All those records are part of the Smithsonian Institute. Since then, I've made, I think a total, it's probably 50 albums with the dulcimer. And so I started to perform, and when I was in my maybe mid-20s, I had a very, very strange experience happen. I again had something like, I guess you would, I call it an OBE because I really didn't feel like I was in my body when I kind of saw this kind of thing happening. But I saw that I would be dying. And I was going to give a concert in Philadelphia with my friend Roy, and I told him about this. I said, I'm telling you, man, something's going to happen. And he said, nothing's going to happen. And I knew some people who were into psychic stuff, and they said, you're not going to die, you'll be fine. So I went and I gave the concert, and on the way home, there was an ice storm.
Wait till you hear this.
And what would have been a 45-minute drive from the Painted Bride, where I was performing, to my house was like a 2-hour thing, because it was really, really bad. And when I got home, I lived in an apartment next door to my parents. And I think Roy and I got back, it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the phone rang. And it was a hospital calling, and they wanted to talk to the parents of Kevin Roth. And I said, well, who is this? And they said, well, this is so-and-so from the hospital. And I said, well, what do you want? I don't understand. And they said, well, who are you? And I said, I'm Kevin Roth. And she kind of like didn't say anything for a second. She said, well, we're trying to reach a Kevin Roth family because someone was brought in here and he died tonight. And the name Kevin Roth is in his license, and this is the number on a business card. So what had happened was that his sister, somewhere along the line, picked up my business card, I guess, and gave it to him because we had the same name. And we were also both from Chester County, oddly enough, although we had never met. And he was in a car accident with a friend of his and unfortunately broke his neck and died. I had had a really bad neck ache. I think it was the same side where he broke his neck, although I'm not sure. I had to go to a doctor. I had to go to a massage therapist. This thing would not leave. This was for about 2 weeks before.
Okay, so, I mean, just think about how much there is to unpack there. So, same name, same county, guy ends up dying. He's having phantom pain a couple weeks prior. I mean, just, it's crazy. And, they called his number the night the other Kevin died, thinking it was him.
And I was just sure I was going to die. I mean, it's just, Anyway, what happened is they announced it on the radio in Philadelphia, and they had been playing my music on the radio at that time, and they started to play my albums in memorial to me, and it was a very strange experience, because when I told Roy that the hospital would call, he like just freaked out. He said, "Oh my God, I can't believe this." It wasn't all that strange to me, because everything was strange to me. It always has been. But in the morning, neighbors came over to my parents' house with food to show their condolences, because this was all over the news. You know, Kevin Roth from Chester County passed away. Kevin Roth was a recording artist and dulcimer player, and had nothing to do with the guy Kevin Roth who had actually died. It was very interesting, because I kind of got to see how people would react to my death, and I had absolutely no idea that many people cared or thought that highly of me or whatever. But my father had to come next door and wake me up and to see if I was alive, because literally he had like 3 neighbors coming over with food and things that people do for other people when someone passes away. And I told my father about it, and you know, he already knew that I was kind of a little off the beaten track anyway.
So, I mean, really, it's nuts, totally nuts. And it just makes you, wonder. Zunar said, so a doppelganger. I mean, I don't know what the other Kevin looks like, but I mean, so many comparisons. And I know this is far out there, but you know, we go skirt the edge on a lot of stuff here. So, but again, this is just, I'm just putting it out there as a thought, not saying this is the case, but it almost feels like kind of like a weird Matrix screw up in some way with this, even though, yeah, like it's clearly filled with all these synchronicities and everything like that, but it really makes you wonder if this was almost a screw up. But because he's even having what the dream and stuff too, it's just strange, really strange.
Later on in my life, another experience that happened was that I got into children's music, and I became very well known, and I became rich and all that kind of stuff, and I was pretty miserable, and none of it really lasted for very long. But it was through that I actually got to know Peter, Paul, and Mary, and they became really good friends of mine and mentors. I was great friends with Mary, and Peter did a duet with me on one of my albums of Puff, Magic Dragon, and Noel Paul Stuckey and I did an album together. So it went from like having this passion for this group to them really helping me in my career down the line.
Crazy, right? So he loves the band, Peter, Paul, and Mary, as a teenager or child, and then he ends up being mixed up in his career with them, and he's on albums. It's just like, wow.
But I had an impression that things were about to get really bumpy. Even though I was very successful, I was also relatively unhappy. So what I ended up doing was moving from California to Florida, where my father lived, and hanging out there. And around 2013, I guess it was, my father passed away at 90. And right before he passed away, although none of us knew that he was going to die, my mother, who I hadn't thought about for years and years and years, I felt her presence. And it wasn't really an OBE, but I felt her presence in my kitchen telling me that I needed to prepare for something that was going to be coming up. And then a couple days later, my dad died. But in 2013, I had another OBE experience, and this was a really big one. Again, I saw a bird's eye view of what was about to kind of come. I didn't really feel in my body, but it showed me that I would have a big illness, and that I would probably go to Kansas, live with my sister for a while, and then move to California, and everything would be okay. And I didn't have any idea what that was about, because I was really healthy. When I got to Kansas, out of the blue, I discovered that I had melanoma, which really shocked me. And they had run a series of tests, and I was waiting for the results. And I had another OBE experience, because it had been a really long time waiting for these results. And I was looking at a picture of my father, and I sort of felt kind of, again, removed from my body somehow. And I could almost hear him say to me, "You're going to hear tomorrow, and it's going to be really, really bad, Kev." He always called me Kev. He said, "It's going to be rough. You're going to be okay, but it's going to be a tough, tough time."
So he's getting premonition, or you could call it after-death communication with a little side of premonition. Hey, things are going to be rough. Just had this test, waiting on the results. And then, well...
The next morning at 9 o'clock, doctor called and said, "Kevin, bad news, you got stage 3 melanoma. There's only 4 stages to it, so that's really bad." And they ran some more tests, and cancer hadn't gone anywhere else, thank God, but there was a 70% chance it was going to come back and I'd be dead in a couple of years. And I had a couple doctors tell me, that's kind of what's going to happen. But I knew it wasn't, because I'd had this experience. As it turned out, never came back. It's been 5 or 6 years. I'm fine. And I did actually move to California. I live in San Diego now. And then a really weird kind of experience happened where I was sitting on my couch and I was thinking about what I should be doing next with my music. And this whole vision came of that I would be a teacher, and I would be teaching people how to get through problems in their life, how to realize what really mattered to them, why, and to get a game plan, and to teach this in some sort of spirituality. But I wasn't clear what it was. But I had this real strong desire to do it. And 2 months later, COVID-19 hit and the world shut down. So during...
Okay, so hear that one more time.
Some sort of spirituality. But I wasn't clear what it was. But I had this real strong desire to do it. And 2 months later, COVID-19 hit and the world shut down. So during that time, I developed this and got a few clients and began to teach them what I knew. And it worked for them. And I brought the dulcimer, the instrument that I play, into it. And in fact, I even created a dulcimer called a cosmic dulcimer. I call it a wink. Here it is. And I play this because I teach.
Let's take a look at that.
Here it is. And I
look at, hey, it's got Saturn on it. I didn't even notice that the first time I watched on the top. Yeah, because it's got stars, maybe a crescent moon, a comet. So Saturn's on there. Of course.
Play this because I teach something called ODYSEE meditation, which kind of helps people kind of get into this trance state thing where they can actually see what they need to do. Anyway, the whole point, and really the major point of this video, is that I have discovered, in fact, that the vision, the out-of-body experience as a young kid is true. And science is actually proving this with quantum physics and string theory, and it connects to all of the old mystical teachings. This life is a dream. We are the dreamer in the dream having this dream. It sounds bizarre, but I'm telling you, this is not it, okay? You can look at things even, just right in front of you. Like people say, well, it's in your mind. Well, where's the mind? If you open up a brain, you can't find a mind. You look at someone who has died in the casket. Where did they go? Their body's there, but where did they go? So if you do a lot of investigating and studying of this, which I have, because I've always been interested in this since my experiences as a young kid, it all comes down to consciousness, something called consciousness. And no one can describe it because it has no form and it's not describable. But it exists. And I believe that was the presence that I felt and that I feel and that we're all part of. So my whole life with these experiences have just felt like the Twilight Zone. And I feel that the real reason for this video to be made is to bring awareness to people that this isn't all there is, and that you can get all the fame and fortune. I mean, I didn't have a lot of it, but I had enough of it. I had over $1 million to know that that does not buy you happiness. And what really buys you happiness is finding that home, that sense that we all long for, and it's not here on the planet.
You got that right. Our home is our inner self. See, the home isn't exterior. It's all built within us.
But there is a way to find it through spiritual seeking and all kinds of other ways. Some people have NDEs, like I said, where they have these near-death experiences and they report back to their doctors on the operating room, when they were flatlined, exactly what happened. And the doctor says there's no way you can know that. You are clinically dead, but they do. And again, these have been reported by other doctors and surgeons. Ebenezer Alexander, there's a woman, I forget, but she's a spinal surgeon. She drowned for 20 minutes and saw the whole vision. She had sort of like an OBE, but it was an NDE. So I feel that my life is to teach now really what I saw in the vision, which is this information and what I know and how to kind of navigate your life. And I believe the dulcimer came into my life for that reason as well. And looking back, everything is connected. Looking forward, the only visions that I've had that I can recall, because I haven't had an OBE since right before the COVID thing, but that this was going to be really known, and that I would be reaching the right people, and the right people would be reaching me. It's not like I'm a teacher, I know everything. This is a connection process. So nothing happens by happenstance, and it's all in a way sort of a fig Newton of your imagination.
This is a connection process. Part of the life script. Remember, we come here prior to coming here, I should say. We agree to live out certain aspects of our life that are planned in conjunction with I can call it a guide, a teacher, the council of elders, aka parasites. Okay. And they get us to go and not even be aware and do certain things, maybe pick certain careers, schooling, integrated with the soul group as well, certain family members, friends, maybe even pets. I mean, all this stuff. And I mean, the progression of Kevin's life is fascinating, to say the least. So, he struggled early on, the loss of a parent, got into music, ended up being involved with his favorite band from his childhood, got cancer, then started to, think he had a spiritual type calling that he needed to express. And he admits that that he didn't write the music. And that you'll hear in more detail, I believe, in the next one. So that's why I want to play both. I know it's going to be a little bit longer tonight, but it's worth it.
But it's real in the sense of living in a dream world. So if you have any questions about this, besides which psychiatric hospital you'd like to admit me to, there's a link underneath where you can reach out to me and answer any questions at kevinroth.org. And just as a side note, a few times I just thought I was like crazy, and I went to psychiatrists, therapists for a brief period of time. I went to one who was a Jesus guy. I went to one who was like a Buddhist, and I went to some woman. These are all over a period of years. And none of them denied what I had. None of them said, no, you're crazy. They said, well, okay, well, you need to follow this. So, you know, the whole thing is like a setup, and it's really bizarre. But
See, his own words. I didn't say it. The whole thing is like a setup.
Years. And none of them denied what I had. None of them said, no, you're crazy. They said, well, okay, well, you need to follow this. So, you know, the whole thing is like a setup, and it's really bizarre, but it's the dream, and the dream is the dream. And, you know, what can I tell you? It's the Twilight Zone, and I try and make the best of it. So thanks for watching.
So, right? Calls the Twilight Zone. You know, it's all planned. All admitted. So let's where are we at here for time? All right, yeah, we'll start the first part of the video with Jeff. I just pop this up really quick. So we're at 36 minutes, Jimmy. All right, and so yeah, the next one is an interview with JeffMara. I highly recommend checking out his channel. He interviews loads of experiencers. I love Jeff's work, and he really gets the information out there. His personal views are not necessarily discussed all that often, but he's really good at what he does, asks some great questions, and if you're looking to further your own research, Jeff's channel is loaded with experiences.
All right.
Okay. Sorry about that. Hopefully it's not too loud. All right.
Kevin, since you're a big fan, you know that you all love out-of-body and near-death experiences. So if you don't mind, let's start on the day that yours happened and see how it intertwines into your story here.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go back even a little further because I have two sisters. They're older. I'm the youngest. And after my second sister, Beth, was born, my mother had her tubes tied. And then 2 years later, I was born. So that'll set the whole story up for you. That's kind of bizarre. But I always knew or had a sense since I was a young kid, I would say probably about 5 or 6, that I felt like a fish out of water, that this planet, this experience just didn't seem to make sense. You know, you look up at the sky, there's no lid. What's going on? And I was sort of born with that question. I was also born very musical, and I was also born very dyslexic and ADD, but they didn't know about that back then. So as a young kid, and this is almost as if I had, like this had happened yesterday, I was shown, you know how in NDEs they see reviews of their lives? I saw a preview of my life. It was really kind of in 3 sections from what I can recall. And the first section was that I would have a difficult childhood. The second was that it would still be kind of difficult, but I'd be very successful. And then the third thing is I would come to understand this question, which was, what is this presence? You know, a lot of your guests talk about when they have these NDEs, they feel a sense of home. And I just never felt like Earth was home. I just sensed that there was something else going on. And
same here. I think we all kind of feel that way, right? I mean, we all feel this is not our home. As I've talked about briefly, I'm not going to drone on too much, but I've felt this since as far back as I remember. I didn't understand it, but I just knew something wasn't right here, and it didn't make sense. That's all. I'm not saying I was like, you know, Mr. Researcher out of the womb. I just knew something was wrong.
And that really stuck with me. So I'll talk a little bit in the sense of how I viewed it. You know, when you go to a movie, there's the movie screen, which I guess in this case you could call consciousness or God or Buddha or whatever you want to call it. And then the movie that plays is sort of like your life. And we get caught up in the movie. When we're watching a good movie, we don't even remember that there's a screen. But this overriding presence, consciousness, God, whatever you ever call it, seemed to me at a really young age that that's all there was. And this whole thing was just a dream or a farce or something, but it didn't seem real. Still doesn't, but now I understand why. So the young Kevin had a tough time. One of the things that happened to me early on, around, I guess it was around 8, is my sister brought home an album of a group called Peter, Paul, and Mary, who I mentioned because they play a very significant role in my journey. But I was a fanatic about this group. I mean, most of my kids my age were like into the Beatles and rock and roll. There was something about this folk music group that just pulled me. And the first OBE experience was feeling this like overriding presence, but there was also sort of an out of body feeling in connection with Peter, Paul, and Mary. And I've been trying to think of how I can describe the OBE, because it's not just one feeling, they change, but it's almost like I'm watching a movie and I'm walking into it. So that was around 8. And then my mother, when I was 13, died suddenly. And my father met a woman after my mom died, and he remarried 2 months later. So there was a lot of havoc there. There was no time for healing, but that's just how the cards fell for me. The next very strange thing that happened is I had an elementary school librarian who played guitar, and she used to like when I played piano because I had a really good ear for piano. In fact, that was one of the few things I was praised for as a kid. And one day she said to me, I know this guy and he knows this girl who sounds like Joni Mitchell. And I was a really big Joni Mitchell fan. So if you want, he'll take you to this party. Now I'm 13. My mother just died. I'm not into meditation at all. But again, this OBE kind of like, you're going. I didn't even know the guy. And I went with him and we went to this house where they were doing these meditations. And upstairs in the kitchen was a woman playing the dulcimer, which is the instrument behind me. And when I saw her and I saw the dulcimer, it was like, boom, that's your magic carpet ride.
Oh, like he intuitively knew. I mean, I know we're kind of rehashing some of the stuff from the first video, but he intuitively knew this was the thing. And again, I'm not trying to make this about me, but I had a similar experience. I used to play the saxophone. And I was able to play by ear as a young child. And I just never really enjoyed it, but something kind of drew me to it at a young age. I didn't understand why, but and I played, but I never really enjoyed it. I always preferred guitar, especially once early teens, late middle school type thing. Like the sax was not for me anymore, and I just gave it up. But I had so many problems with reading sheet music and stuff like that, but playing by ear was fun and interesting, and it did pretty good for a child, but nah.
What was very strange about it is that she was getting out of the music business because she had met this kind of guru sheikh who talked about God. And my whole question was about God, but I wasn't really religious. So I sort of followed her, and she taught me a little bit about the dulcimer, but not very much. And somewhere along the line, I decided that if I could become rich and famous, all my problems would be solved. So that's what I focused on. Plus the fact that I just got praised all the time for music, and I had a terrible time in school because I was really dyslexic. My father would say, well, if 3 and 2 are 5, what's 2 and 3? And I just wouldn't know. And he used to get mad at me, because he had no idea, well, how could that be? So I started to play the dulcimer, and it kind of became my life raft. And I was very interested in psychic things and astrology things and looking for this home. Not so much like, how do I get out of this place, but like, what's going on? This is just really strange. Life was really bouncy for me, to be honest with you. I had to didn't get along well with the stepmother. School was a trip. But I had this experience right after playing the dulcimer that I should get a record contract, which is a ridiculous thing to think. I mean, I didn't even know anybody who played the dulcimer except Anne, who introduced it to me. And sometimes when these OBE things come, it's sort of like it pushes me in a direction that I have no intention of going, which I'll tell you about a little bit later on. But I was 14, 15, I played the dulcimer 2 years, and I got a record contract. I sent a tape to a record company called Folkway Records, who had Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger, and I thought, wow, I got a record contract. And I got signed at 16, and I made like I think about a dozen records for him. So what happened is I had a career, and I started to travel around the country trying to become known as a dulcimer player. And dulcimer was just becoming popular in the 70s. So I sort of caught the wave of it. And all along thinking, I'd run into people who were spiritual or psychic or something like that. And I would and they were always older than me. I was always really attracted to it. And I, in my own way, was saying, how can I get to this home? How can I find this peace? I would write songs about it. I'd sing about it. And I think music pretty much saved me. So the first part of that OBE projection really did happen. And then things started to get weirder. Out of the blue, just one day I was reading the newspaper and I read about children's family music. And I didn't have any kids. I wasn't really that into kids at the time. And I just decided that, with this thing like, okay, go make a kids record. So I contacted somebody and I started to make children's records, and I started to make money, and they started to win awards. And it like sort of catapulted my music career.
So he ends up just coming to this, like it just goes to him. He doesn't have any interest in making kids music or anything like that, and all of a sudden he's in the thick of things in the music industry and stuff, and does well.
And very strange things happened. One of the things was that I got a phone call from a TV producer in New York, and he had put his daughter to sleep with my lullaby record and wanted me to sing the theme to a show called Shining Time Station, which was based on Thomas the Tank Engine. Mm-hmm. And he wanted me to sing it. So I went into New York. He was going to star Ringo's Star of the Beatles. And he offered me, sort of a contract deal. And I took it back to my music attorney, and he said, no, don't do it. It's not a good deal. So I went back to New York, and I was talking to him about it. And I said, he said not to do it. And, Rick, who was a great guy, just a great guy, he said, that's fine. But I understand. But, it's New York City. I can get anybody to sing this. If you do it and the show takes off, you're going to be set. And I remember, Jeff, that moment sitting in that restaurant. And it was like, you're doing this. If you have to pay him, you're doing this. It was the first and only time I ever went against my music attorney's advice. I said, okay, I'll do it. The show became really, really big, and it launched me into this career. And I ended up becoming well-known, pretty well-known, I'm not Bob Dylan, but well-known and rich.
So he ends up kind of going against his attorney's advice. And I mean, Christ, if you're given that possibility to do something like that early on in your career, of course you're going to take it. Of course, it's going to catapult you, or at least get your name out there no matter what. You're going to have credentials aside with Ringo's company, or whatever the scenario was there. I mean, of course you're going to take it, but isn't it kind of funny again that he starts out by not really having any interest, decides to do it anyways, and then ends up in this scenario. I mean, come on. This has got the Matrix marketing department written all over it.
In between that time, I realized that money was not buying any happiness. But stranger things began to unfold. It was almost like I was being shown these lessons over and over and over again. And this story I'm going to tell you, it still blows my mind. And I was talking to my friend about it because he was part of it. I had a concert in Philadelphia, and I had a really bad neck ache. My whole shoulder, I could barely move my neck. And I had this really big feeling I was going to die. There was just no question about it to me. And I was telling my friend Roy about it, and he said, "You're probably not going to die. You're crazy." But he knew that I had these little out-of-body experiences, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't even know about NDEs back then. It was just kind of like 1 foot on the planet, 1 foot out of the planet all the time. And you can get into that zone, by the way, when you're creative. They call it flow. You just kind of channel this energy because everything's pretty much energy. And I happen to know a really great astrologer. And she looked at my chart. She says, "You're not going to die." But I swore up and down. I said, "This is going to happen." And I had a concert in Philadelphia. It was a Friday night. And Roy and I drove in. I gave the concert. And on the way home, it began to sleet. And the roads in Philadelphia got really, really slick. So what would have been normally a 40-minute drive home was an hour and a half. And I got home. I was living in an apartment next to my parents. It must have been maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and the phone rings just as I walked in. And there's a lady on the other end, and she said, "We're trying to locate Kevin Roth." And I'm thinking, well, who is this some, if I had a fan, maybe it was that, these people sometime would find my number and call me up, "Hey, I just got a dulcimer. Are you Kevin Roth?" And I said, "Well, this is Kevin Roth." And there was this like silence. And she said, "I don't understand. We're looking for his family." I said, "Well, what do you want with his family?" And she said, "Well, there's been an accident and he's been killed. And we're trying to locate his family." And I said, "Well, I'm Kevin Roth and I'm alive." And I went to sleep. I told Roy about it, and he like, yeah, you're nuts anyway. You have these things happen. In the morning, I was woken up by my dad knocking on my door to see if I was alive, because the radio, I lived in a place called Chester County, and the radio had announced that Kevin Roth of Chester County had been killed. Now, I was really well known in Chester County, and in that area, they played my music and stuff like that. But what had happened was this guy, Kevin Roth, his sister had picked up my business card, I guess given it to him, and he had my card in his wallet. So I guess they assumed that that was my number. And I got to tell you, man, I feel really badly for his family. I never met the guy, but I got to witness my own death, of the reaction to my own death. It was like, I never even knew anybody really cared. The radio was playing music in my honor. Wow. And I was really freaked out because I had a show Saturday night and I'm thinking nobody's going to come. So I started to call the radio stations that played my music and say, I'm alive. And I got really freaked out by that, which is understandable. Sure. But it wasn't unusual for things like that. I would go on a concert tour in the middle of nowhere and I'd get stuck in snow at 3 o'clock in the morning and some guy with a tractor just come by. So I kept looking for I kept praying to God or, let me understand what's going on. I knew I didn't write the music. Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen will tell you that we don't write the songs.
Boom. There we go. There's the open admission again, where, we don't write the songs. I didn't write it.
So let me understand what's going on. I knew I didn't write the music. Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen will tell you that we don't write the songs.
See, yeah, he's right. We've had open admissions from both of them. I've seen them talk about it. And there are a ton of other musicians who've said that, artists, script writers, book authors, and all sorts of different professions that openly admit that, hey, I got this idea in a dream or in a premonition or an out-of-body experience, or I was, I was writing and I didn't even know where it was coming from. Well, isn't that interesting, right? It's all part of the Matrix marketing department, which keeps the illusion running. It's all a hatchet job, my friends. We've all fallen for this crap, hook, line, and sinker. And the Matrix uses people like Kevin and other people in the entertainment industry and And there you go, right? I mean, and of course they get popular, they get propped up. I mean, if you just think about Kevin's story. No offense, Kevin, if you ever run across this video, but you yourself admitted it was, like it was a big setup job. And that's what it is. You're doing the bidding for something else. And you also are memory wiped as to, what you agreed to and all this other stuff, just like every one of us here. See? It's amazing to have examples like this. It's awesome because it just reaffirms all my other work I've done, and I know a lot of you have done the same research and come to the same conclusions. It's great to see it admitted from someone like Kevin, who's very rational and explaining everything, his entire story. I believe 100%.
Actually, nothing that happens is really of our doing, but it just got stranger and stranger and stranger. And then I just thought, you know what? I'm in California at that time. A little while later, I'd moved to California, and I said, I'm rich. I kind of got known, and I'm more miserable than I've ever been. So I'm getting out of the music business. I'm just going to go see if I could grow up. I was about 33, and I moved to Florida. And then the beginning of the major OBEs came, like small bubbles, big bubbles, and then, this huge. So to make a long story short, what happened is I moved to Florida, and my dad lived there. I was really close to my dad. And I started a little funky retail store. And in 2015, pardon the expression, the shit hit the fan. And my 9-year relationship ended. My dad suddenly died, and I closed my store. But let me tell you about the dad dying, because this is something that's so important for your listeners to hear about this, because you've got to trust your gut on stuff. He was in the hospital not very long, and I called him, and he said, "Don't come." He said, "I'll probably be discharged on Monday." And it was a Friday, and I was driving to my store to open up the store. And I just had this, another one of these experiences, nope, you're going to the hospital. The hospital was 45 minutes away. There was no way I could go there and get back and open my store in time. But you're going to the hospital. Just forget about it, Kevin. That's where you're going. And I went in, and he was in really bad shape. He could barely talk. He did ask me how the store was, and I said it was fine. And then something very strange happened. I stayed about 20 minutes because I really had to get back for the store. And I said to him out of the blue, I said, "I love you." And I say out of the blue because we were in a family that expressed that stuff. And he said, "I love you too." And I left. And 2 hours later, I was in my store just doing my thing, and I got another one of these ding-a-ling things, and I called the hospital, and he had just died.
So he had the premonition. I had the same premonition for my father. I knew. I just knew. I had this. I can't even explain it, but I just knew. Like he said, a ding, that like a bell, and you just know, okay. And I was when my dad was on his way out and going through troubles, I was about an hour away, and I got in the car that morning, and he died very early the next day. So we do get these feelings when someone we're close with is about to go.
So again, I was led, I believe, to the hospital to hear that "I love you" thing. And, I tell students and clients all the time when I work with them on this stuff, you have a chance to tell someone that you love them, do it, because life can change on a dime. And that was a tremendous healing moment for me, man, because even though he's physically gone, I feel him around all the time. But it was a pretty sad time, and things were screwed up. And I went in my apartment, and I sat there, and I thought, I don't know what to do. And then I had one of the bigger OBEs. And what came to me was that I should move to Kansas, where my sister lived, and it would be a respite, and that I would have a major illness. I'd be okay. And then I'd probably go to California. And I couldn't understand, these things that come with such clarity. It's almost like, people on your show talk about these deceased ones talking to them, but it's not verbal. And they feel them, but they can't see. It was just like that. It was just as clearer than really being on the planet. And I thought, I'm healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. But I called my sister. She said, come to Kansas. So I drove to Kansas with my little dog, Bosco, and 16 dulcimers and a couple clothes. And I was there maybe 2 weeks. And out of the blue, Peter and Paul had come to give a concert. Mary had passed away several years ago. And by the way, they had become really close friends of mine and mentors, and they helped in my career. Peter did a duet of Puff the Magic Dragon. Mary had me sing at the Kennedy Center. I mean, my idols embraced me. And I started to understand why the connection, they weren't a small folk group, and they were like the biggest folk group in the world, actually. And for them to take me under their wings to a certain extent was a huge, huge deal, but not so different because I had sort of seen this, it sort of all fell into place.
Kind of seen this, it all fell into place. I mean, he knows. It's all open admissions about basically this whole thing being scripted.
And while I was at that concert, Noel Paul, his name is Noel Stuckey, he took the middle name Paul for the group, offered me a record deal to write a spiritual album, which I had never thought about. So I thought about it and I thought, wow, the guy's offering me a record deal. Why not, And then I went maybe a week or two and I was kind of excited about it. I thought, well, life is picking up. And then I just went for a routine dermatology appointment. You move someplace, you set up the bank and the doctor and the chiropractor and all these things. And this dermatologist, he was an old guy. I just picked him randomly. I walked into his office and the first thing I noticed was that he had a Buddha on his shelf. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, And he looked at this little freckle on my nose and he said, I don't like the look of it. And I said, no, don't worry about it, because my dermatologist in Florida saw it. They said, no problem. He said, I don't think so. He said, I don't like the look of it. He said, let's do a little scraping of it and send it out. I didn't think anything of it. And to make a long story short, within a short period of time, I ended up being told, after I had a little biopsy, and this is shrinking a very long story, very short. I was called and told I had stage 3 melanoma. And there's only 4 stages, and there's no cure for melanoma if you get it really badly. I had been waiting for the test results, and I hadn't heard. I was getting nervous. And in my apartment, there was a picture of me and my dad, and as if he was in the room, I heard him say, it's going to be rough, Kev. It's going to be bad news. You'll be okay, but it's going to be tough. I remember because he always called me Kev. And the next morning is when I got the phone call from the doctor. And he said, I want to take this across the hall to an oncologist. And I want you to see them immediately. So like my whole life, it's like, because you never think you're going to get cancer. It's like me, healthy. I work out, I eat right. I can tell you what I think brought it on was stress, which is one of the reasons that I teach what I teach now. But I went and I had these scans done, and the oncologist that I went with was a woman. I don't remember her name, but I didn't like her from the second I saw her. I had a bad feeling about this woman. So while I was waiting for the test results to come back, I was looking for other oncologists. There was only one guy in Kansas City, and there's a lot of doctors in Kansas City. There was one that I just radiated towards, and I said, he's your guy, but he wasn't taking any new patients. So I couldn't do anything about it. I had the test done. I had a CAT scan and an MRI, and I was sure, except for the fact that my OBE said you're going to be fine, that this thing had spread all over me because I made the mistake of Googling this stuff on the internet and reading the horror stories. So I went in to get my results. And I remember I went in with my sister and I told her, I said, be prepared because this thing's probably all over my body and I probably aren't going to be alive very longer, which didn't bother me because I don't think, I know that this life isn't real anyway. It's just kind of like one of these dream things, but still, right? And she put the tests up on the screen. And as if she was saying, where do you want to go for lunch and you got any plans for dinner? She said, almost like in one straight sentence, well, the cancer hasn't spread anywhere, so I want you to go see this other doctor because we want to remove the lymph nodes. I mean, not like, congratulations, Kevin, you know? I mean, it was like, first of all, I couldn't believe that it hadn't spread. I couldn't believe it. In a way, I knew that it didn't spread. And then I said to her, why would you want to remove the lymph nodes if there's no signs of cancer? And she said, because it's protocol. And I came as close to hitting somebody as I've ever come into my life. I mean, I'm a real chill guy, but I stood up and I said to her, my name isn't protocol. And if you don't see cancer, you're not taking anything out. And I got up and I walked out and I went to the receptionist's desk to pay my little copay. And there on the counter was the doctor I wanted's card. And I said to the lady, I said, does he work here? And she said, yeah. I said, I want to see him. And she said, you can, he's booked. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not leaving until I see him anytime. And I got to give an award to this woman because, man, she had the dirtiest look down. She's the queen of dirty looks, man. But she said, if you can be here at 7 a.m. tomorrow, I'll fit you. Like, I wouldn't have slept there to be with this guy. Again, it was my gut. It was following my sense. And thank God, because he was the only oncologist, and I saw 4 of them, that said, do nothing. Let's wait and see what happens. But he also said, and he took time with me, a doctor that took time with me. He was compassionate. I mean, he was just like, great, you know? But he did say there's a 70% chance it's going to come back within a year, and then you'll be dead within 3. And I said, well, what about these and he said, none of it's really working. So I went home and I had this epiphany. And the epiphany was, if I end up dying, which I didn't think I would, I better figure out what really matters to me and why, and what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And I turned the switch off of stress, negativity, worry. I just changed the channel, Jeff. I just said, if I'm going to be dead, first of all, what really matters to me is my music and my art, because that's my purpose in life. It's so important that people follow their purpose in life. And if they don't even know what it is, I help them find it. But it's so important to follow, because that's what you came on this dream planet for. The second thing was my dog Bosco. It was my little miniature dachshund. He's like my fur angel. I wanted to spend all my time with him. And the third thing was that if I was going to die, I sure as hell wasn't doing it in Kansas. So I decided I'm going to go to San Diego and create this bohemian life. Now, on paper, I couldn't afford it because, I could barely make it. I'd lost all my money in the stock market, and then I lost the rest of it in the real estate market. And
so, like, I mean, I'm not even trying to laugh at this, but think about it. Think about, like, the whole setup job. Everything's scripted. He ends up becoming a millionaire as a result of the whole music thing. And then he gets screwed with real estate and he gets screwed with the stock market. I mean, really. And he gets cancer. So see how, like, you gotta needle in that suffering. You gotta give him the fame, the fortune, guide him on his path. You extract what you want out of him. Get it out there to the world for whoever's going to be receptive to the music or whatever. And then, boom, crush them. Take the money. Take tank the stocks. Give him cancer. All scripted, but, he was used. I'm sorry, Kevin, you were used.
it was a mess. I mean, I had some money, but not San Diego money. It's expensive to live out here. So I called a friend of mine and I said, he was a realtor, and I said, can you find me an apartment for $1,000 a month? 1 bedroom with parking and laundry. Throw in a dozen roses. He said, you can't even get a studio for $1,000. But I knew I was going to San Diego, and I found it. This apartment, completely redone, $1,000, parking, laundry, everything. So you see, it all kind of came, and I began to recognize that there's absolutely something bigger going on besides my agenda. And then things got a little weirder.
Okay, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to rewind it right there, and we'll stop and take a quick break. I got to refill my water here. And so we'll be back in about 5 minutes. There's a lot more to come. We've still got about 40 minutes without commentary. There's it's really good stuff. So hang in there with me. Be right back. Thank you. welcome back. Thank you for your patience, my friends. Harold in the house, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on with me last night. Very much appreciated. And a bunch of people were happy that you showed up too, and they thanked you. So, yeah, Abstract, shoot me a message in Discord on the DM, and we'll have a chat. I mean, I don't want to keep going with this, and I want to be able to talk with you about this. So, you've always been welcomed here, and we've had a lot of good conversations. So, some people have bad days and shit happens, but it'd be nice to get the full explanation of what the hell's going on. I can't scan all these chats all the time. I'm not let's see. I'm horrible at multitasking. All right, so let's get it going.
Going on besides my agenda. And then things got a little weirder. Okay. So I was in my apartment and I was freaking out because I was given a death sentence, and I thought, I got to change everything about my life. I've got to let go of stress. I've got to get rid of toxic people. I have to start eating healthy. I have to start envisioning things. And I saw a movie on Netflix about a guy named Yogananda. I had kind of heard of, but didn't know who he was. And he was a guru, and I watched, and it was interesting. And then I got done, and something said, watch it again. And I never watch movies back to back. I mean, maybe a year away, So I watched it again, and then I had another one of these things that said, go look for one of his churches or fellowships. He talked about something called self-realization. But honestly, he was a little far out for me. But what he said was very healing, very sweet. His story was interesting. I knew Steve Jobs and George Harrison liked him. But I thought, go find one of his churches. But I knew at this point, if it's coming to me, I got to. And I figured he had a church in California, or New York. If he had anything in the Midwest, it may be Chicago, not in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
How would I find one in Kansas, right? I Googled his website, and I could literally walk out my apartment door and within 5 minutes be at his church. I'd driven past his church 1,000 times, never saw, his name wasn't on it. And it was like, at this point, life was so like, oh, seriously? It's like, all right. I'll just go with it. You got a death sentence, here's the guru across the street. And I went into his service on a Saturday morning, and I don't know what they were really saying much, but I felt my depression and my concern just lift. I just felt like, oh man, have I found the right place? Even though I didn't know much to do with it, it got me interested in something called self-realization. And then I began to dig.
Now, that is a big one. Self-realization was something that helped with me too. He's right. Dig on that. And that's what I think we all go through. I mean, anyone who's probably here has. And it's, rediscovering yourself, being super aware of who you are, or starting to be aware of who you are, and building on that over time. Certain things that were once cloudy all of a sudden become clear.
And I ran across a teacher from India named Ramana Maharshi, who was in Time magazine. He is the only kind of guru teacher. He didn't even like being called a guru, who everybody likes. He quotes Jesus. Really smart guy. And when I read what he said, I said, that's home. He's talking about home. And I recognized it like I recognized the dulcimer. It was like, this is your teacher. And I didn't really want a guru. I'm a kind of a, don't woo-woo me, But it just connected. And then I kept Googling, and I found a teacher in California. And when I came out here, I met him. His name's Robert Wolf, and he's an author. You'd never know that he was a teacher because he's very, very under the radar. Maybe not now, but his books are really under the radar. And he began to show me, or led me to the idea of understanding who I am. And I came to understand that, they say, well, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I believe that this is a dream, and that we have an experience of a dream. We're a dreamer in the dream, having the dream. But we are that we're seeking. That God isn't up there, or Jesus, whatever you want to call it. They're not there. There is no there. Everything is, or like they say, I am that I am. That's the truth. That's what I've come to learn. When I work with people on discovering their passions, sometimes people will come up to me and they'll say, well, I'm into Jesus. And I'll say, like, be still and know that I'm God, or I am that I am. And, they say, well, yeah, you know about Jesus? I said, yeah, of course I know about Jesus. If they're Buddhists, I say something about Buddha, emptiness and form, and form is emptiness. If they're atheists, it's like, okay, you don't believe in anything, but you like nature, right? So everything is just one beautiful thing.
It's just one beautiful thing. Say, I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a lot of beauty, but there's a lot of horrors too. And, many people have died and suffered and been through absolute hell in the name of Jesus. All right? Let's not ever forget that. So it's just not that simple, Kevin. I'm sorry. It's easy to say that and make it feel right, but that's just not the case. I'm sorry. So I have to disagree with you on this one.
And I'm learning about this more myself. It's about love, and it's about kind of accepting yourself. And so I ended up coming out to California. And for the first time in a couple of years, I wrote a new album that was full of joy. It was kind of fun and funky. And it actually got into the loop for a possible Grammy Award. Didn't win, but it was in there. And
he's even in the running for a Grammy Award? Come on. Life script on steroids, my friends.
One day I was just kind of sitting here, and a friend asked me what I was going to be doing for a next project. And I said, I don't know. And he said, you ought to teach what you just went through. You basically survived a death sentence. You completely changed your life. The cancer hasn't come back, and you're thriving. You're doing it, man. You're just doing it. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I never thought about teaching this. And I began to think about it. And then that whole another OBE rush came, and it said, yeah, okay, so we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it. And I start to write out what I did. And what I teach is what I do every day, which is fairly simple. I know what matters. I know why it matters. And I have a game plan. And I know about balance. And I know about riding the surfboard. Out here in California, they ride surfboards. And life is like a surfboard. You're going to get thrown off, which doesn't matter as long as you know how to get back on. And if you can understand emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual balance, you can say, okay, I'm like crazy, nervous about something, and recognize what fear is and go for a walk. You're better. I just learned how to do that. And I started to do it with the dulcimer, with this thing called dulcimer meditation, where I just kind of get into this space where I just play, nothing specific. And I have this thought in the back of my head, like, well, what should I be doing today? Not like a list of things I need to do. And just clarity comes, It was really interesting because I watched your show for, quite a long time. And I was doing this dulcimer meditation, and it was like, get in touch with Jeff about this. And, I had never even thought about it. I just kind of like watch it at night, And so I've learned to trust it. And what I've learned is really, it's super important. The lesson of this home thing is to be kind to yourself. This is just a bubble. It's just a dream. When your other guests talk about NDE experiences and say that's more real up there than it is here, I believe it. And I don't take anything that seriously. I mean, it's great when someone buys a record or something. I don't even go out on tour. I mean, the fame, fortune thing just doesn't even interest me anymore. You know, I'm glad that the stuff is out there. If it comes around again, great. But I feel that my passion, my purpose is in talking about this stuff. And I didn't talk about it for a long, long time because, I mean, these are some pretty strange stories, right? So, but they happened. And as I began to talk about them, people said, oh, yeah. I thought I was hiding something, but so many people feel this, you know. I mean, I'm taken with the fact that they're starting to talk about UFOs being real and nobody cares. It's like, oh, yeah. So I don't know if it's everything that people have been through or what it is, but, you know, they talked some time ago about this new age of consciousness. And I think after things like the COVID and the whole, you know, the whole political thing with Trump and everything, people are like coming to what I'm trying to show them. What matters? Why does it matter to me? Because if you don't know why, when those waves come, you're going to get knocked off. You're not going to get back on. So if you know why and you feel why, you can say, okay, I want to lose weight, not just so I look better, but because my daughter is getting married and I really want this. You can get through anything. You know, as long as you have a plan and you stick to it. I talk about the 3 Ps when I teach this. You know, you need a plan, you need patience, and you need persistence. And all of that's easy to find if you can control your mind by saying, because the mind is like a monkey, man, you know, I don't want to do this, I want to do that, let's do this, let's do that. And if you can say, I know who I am, I know what I want, I know I'm following my purpose, and chatter away, guys, but, you know, I want to be at peace. I want to be happy.
So I know I'm finding my purpose. I want to be at peace. I want to be at happiness. It's all chattering. He's finding the purpose is involving the life script, really, because that's what has been his guide the whole time. Now, I think obviously he's really done a good job with finding himself personally in all of this. And is so in tune that he realizes the life script and openly admits it. But I still think he's, you know, finding your purpose and all that stuff. I think it still kind of is veering off into the whole life script, you know, hey, what's next? Or, you know, where am I supposed to go from here? And relying on that external source when it's just not necessary. And you know, I wanted to keep the chat open, but I just shut it down. I can't concentrate anymore. So, no, it is what it is.
I've never been happier in my life. And you know, I'm past, like they say, after 5 or 6 years, the cancer doesn't return. I hope so. It could come back. I don't envision it coming back. Eventually, I'm going to die. This body's going to die of something. When I go, I go. Where am I going to go? If I never really existed, if all there is that, it doesn't die. You know, that's the only thing that's real. What's real doesn't come and go. So where can I go? If I am that, where can I go? So I take things lighter and I try my best to be as kind to myself as I can, because I can be pretty tough on myself because I'm driven, and that's how I had that music career. But that's not where it's at. You know, you got to love yourself before you can really kind of love other people. You know, I don't mean to preach or anything like that, but all of these experiences have brought me to the fact that there is home. There was never not a home. And this overriding presence I saw as a young kid was true. I'm just like in this dream. I'm the movie on the screen. Consciousness is the screen, and it's just going to play out. And that's okay. You know, and I hope that in the dream, there aren't a whole lot of more ups and downs, but whatever there are, and I know how to deal with them a little bit better than before.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. You've had some amazing synchronicities in your life, as well as some amazing experiences. So I want to start with this. You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that you would, you know, it was kind of like seeing a movie. And so every time you would have an OBE, would you feel like you're out of a body and the future was being presented to you? Or would you just have a knowingness implanted into your consciousness that this is going to happen? Or how are you experiencing that?
Yes and yes and yes. How I experience is it's not, you have to be in your body to know that you're out of your body. So I never felt in my body or out of my body. The closest thing I guess you would call would be maybe psychic prediction, but it wasn't really prediction because I just saw it as a movie. It was like, this is what's happening next to you, Kevin. You don't have any control. I mean, you have some control, but you know, this is what's happening. So things like go to this meditation party, you know, was like, I had no reason to go to a meditation party. You know, a couple of weeks before
I had no reason to go to a meditation party.
Before my dad died, or actually about a week before my dad died, my mother, who I'd never thought of, I felt in my kitchen. I mean, this woman was as far from my mind. I mean, I was like 50 or something like that. And I felt her presence. I didn't see her. I didn't hear her. But I was warned that something was coming up and I needed to prepare.
Roll out the mom.
That's the closest I can describe to it. It was comforting, but it was weird because none of these experiences are logical. But consciousness isn't logical, you know? So, and we want to know what it is. But you can't describe consciousness. You know, I mean, there's this whole movement. I'm sure you know that where science and all these mystics like Deepak Chopra and all these things are coming together now because they're realizing that what the mystics said eons ago is what science now is understanding with quantum physics, like space. So they say the universe is expanding, but into what? They say, well, you know, it's all your mind. It's all your ego. Well, break open the brain and show me the ego, show me the mind. You can't because there is none. So they say, well, now it's all consciousness. It's consciousness, consciousness. So describe consciousness. You can't do it. How can you God or consciousness is the first cause. It doesn't have a form. It doesn't have a this, it doesn't have a that. That's what I've come to understand when I question about it. You know, what are you? Where are you? And it's like, why even ask about that stuff? It's like you couldn't even comprehend it. You know, watch more Jeff's podcasts. They'll tell you, you know, there's this loving prayer, but whatever it is, it's in sort of you're in your body, but you're not in your body, and you're like in a movie. But you're walking into the next scene.
Is there ever a catalyst or something that's happening to you consciously or subconsciously that precipitates these experiences?
The only thing I can imagine is something like the reason I got the whole cancer thing was a spiritual kick in the ass, was to wake up. And the whole dulcimer career, the whole notoriety, all of that has led up to me helping other people discover what I've learned, you know. So
it was all a build up, you know, all scripted, ready to go to have him share what he's learned. Yeah, that was the path he was given. That was the life script he was handed and agreed to.
So some of my clients or students, I mean, they've gotten rid of anger problems. Some have had cancer and they don't want to feel like a cancer victim anymore. You know, other people, one person who works for the government, and, you know, it's like, how do I do that and stay sane? So I'm shocked at these people that learn it this quickly. So I'm hoping that what they learn, they pass on to other people. That seems to be what I'm about at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Now that you've had these experiences, do you believe that the future is already decided?
I think to a large extent, your movie's already written, but you have choices within it.
Exactly. That's now here's the thing I'll put forward on this. Yes, the life script is absolutely real, but the more self-aware you become, the more you reflect on yourself and ask questions and are relentless in doing so, the more you can tweak that. If you're unaware of it happening and unaware that the whole life script is even a thing, then you're on autopilot. I know I was on autopilot for many, many years. And I'm sure everyone in this chat was too at some point. Okay, so yes, we do have free will. And I know it's ridiculous to say it's limited free will, but that's what it is. Okay, the one thing they can't contain is our free will to make certain decisions and kind of divert our path about maybe somewhere that we're supposed to go. There's a huge difference there. Okay, but if you're unaware, you're just going to be on autopilot constantly over and over and over again. So we have free will within the limitations of the body and within the overall structure of the matrix system, which we consented to join at some point. Okay, now, yeah, we may have initially consented to come in and involve ourselves with this experience, but at the same time, we get lost. Okay, we get lost and we keep reincarnating lifetime after lifetime. We build up these attachments and all sorts of different things to this place and our whole addiction to the sensory experience until we kind of reach an incarnation that we say, okay, something's really off here. Yeah, my memory's been wiped every single lifetime, but this time I'm looking a little deeper than I have maybe in previous lifetimes. And my goal is at the finish line, and that's sovereignty and liberation all the way. That's the difference. If you're not aware of it, then then you're basically a drone. Yeah, you can make a decision to go out to your garage and turn on the car to go to work. And you can also drive to work and say, screw it, I don't want to go to work that day. Okay, yeah, that's a free will decision. Or maybe, you could pick out what food you want to eat tonight. Free will decision. But then we also get into these patterns too, right? So, yeah, self-awareness is so, so important in all of this.
From what Ramana Maharshi has written about it, is that, this is all arranged, but you can choose. You can choose, especially choose how to handle it. I can't believe that you could be born with problems and not have the ability to learn how to work with them or to, turn the knob down on them a little bit. I believe that we do have choice. And I believe, I teach something called mindful awareness, that when you become mindful and aware that you're pissed off. I mean, people walk around in anger, they don't even know it. I didn't. I had 3 years of major stress. I had money, I had a house, I was stressed to the max. And you know what that does to the immune system, being a chiropractor. So I think that you get to choose how to handle it with, and I say this cautiously, with God's guidance. I don't like getting religious, but I believe that if you ask, sincerely ask, really ask, you'll be told.
It appears to me that you have an amazing ability to separate your consciousness from the chatter in your mind, and maybe even, when I say chatter, it even probably builds up emotions attached to that chatter, but you have this ability to separate from there and realize this is just a story or something playing within my mind, and push it away and kind of find clarity. Would you say that's true?
Yes, and here's why. Because I'm a doubter. You have to prove things to me, except things like, people, like experiences I had, which I experienced myself. I believe, I've come to learn that everything is a dream. It's an experience, but you have it. It's like when you go to sleep, you have a dream, and in the dream, everything is real. And then you wake up and it's not real. Same thing happens when you're awake. It's the same kind of dream. It's just kind of a waking dream. So you go through this dream experience, and when you start hitting your head up against the wall over and over again and doing things that don't work, like I teach, there's two expressions I love. When you replace what doesn't work with what does, you never go back. You know, I tell a story about a hamburger lady. You know, she goes to one of these little fast places. She gets a hamburger, gets a stomach ache. She's talking to a friend that night, and she says, "You ought to go to the Happy Hamburger." You know, and she says, "What's that?" She says, "It's new. You know, they've got chicken burgers, tofu burgers, dancing burger, all these burgers." She says, "But it'll cost you $15 a hamburger." And the woman says, $15 for a hamburger? But she goes, and it's like the ultimate nirvana hamburger, you know. But do you think she'll ever go back to the other place? Of course she won't. You know, she's got a stomach ache. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So you need to recognize when things aren't working. That's the first thing. That's mindful awareness. Then you need to say to yourself, if it's not working, you know, what matters to me and why? And then you take a situation like doing the wrong thing over and over again, and you begin to analyze it. And you look at the spirituality end of it, and you look at the science end of it. And science says, through quantum physics, that there is nothing. Nothing exists. You know, they say, well, I'm here, I'm talking to Jeff. You can do that in a dream. So if science is saying nothing exists, but I'm having this experience, what's real? You know, what do you do with it? And you begin to look at that deeply. Now, this is even beyond what I normally teach, but that's about non-duality and something called ajata, A-J-A-T-A. In fact, there's a great site at jatasunyata.com. But you begin to look at it and you begin to realize that spiritually, they say that all this is kind of like a dream. And now science is saying it's all a dream. So what am I worried about? What am I getting all caught up in? If I get caught up in this emotionally, mentally, physically, or spiritually, and I feel good, great. But if I don't feel good, what's the point? You know, it's every time I made a record, it had to be a great record. I couldn't even tell you what was on the last 5 albums I made. I don't even know. You know, so nothing really matters. You
can't even tell you what was on the last few records. I don't even know. That's because it just all comes to him. It's given to him, just like all the other artists. He's very talented at what he does, don't get me wrong. But it's still coming from an outside source. And behind that outside source is an overlapping agenda that pushes it onto the masses here. And this happens in every single sector of pop culture, you know, or anything, sports, religion, movies, TV, books, script writers. I know there's things I'm missing, but you get the point. All this stuff is predestined, and people are kind of put above the rest of society to fulfill the agenda of the matrix system for a reason.
I think what matters is that you become aware of who you are. You become aware that you're bigger than this human, form, and that what really exists is something you'll never be able to identify, but it does. It just does. So it makes sense, but in the beginning, logically, it doesn't. It sort of doesn't. But you work through it. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Do you think you can give us a few tips besides what you've already told us? Just give the audience a few tips to help them with their lives.
Well, I hope so, because that's what I do. Mm-hmm. I think the very first thing to do is to, there's one big problem that comes with everybody. They're really hard on themselves. So you got to give yourself a break. Just relax. It's okay. If you're in a real problem, if you're in serious problem, there's help out there. Find a psychologist, find a church, whatever, do whatever you do, but listen to your gut. Okay. You're loved. Okay. We are incredible, magical, dreamlike things. I mean, we don't even know how this body happens. We just take it for granted. I mean, there's no
take it for granted. We don't know. I mean, I don't care how it happens anymore. I just don't. I just know it exists, and I know it's a very poor developed meat suit, poor system of delivery. Like on a scale that I don't think I've ever experienced before. Okay? Or I have, and I'm just forgot about it, obviously. But I'm saying, maybe before all of this, all these incarnations here. This is not, the body is not something to rant and rave about and put up on a pedestal like it's this amazing thing, because it's not. I'm sorry. Let's just be honest with each other.
Lid to the sky. We just take it for granted. We get caught up in the dream. So the first thing is be kind to yourself. The second thing is to know that you're loved and that you are what you're seeking.
Okay, that you're loved. So, this is the question I kind of have, Kevin. If you're working on self-awareness and working on non-duality and all this other stuff. I mean, the love thing, rings bells for me with the new age stuff. It rings bells with the love and light NDEs and how, everything is love. Like, so, it kind of crosses the line for me when I hear that you are loved. What does that mean? I love myself and I love others. But, you are loved implies that there is external forces or something external to me that loves me. Yes. Does my family love me? My dog, girlfriend? Yeah. Okay. But, it doesn't imply that. It implies something much bigger than that. You are loved being, it's like on a grander scale. And see, that's the problem, because then that kind of weasels the love and light near-death experiences, and that we are loved, God loves you, all this stuff, and we're kind of right back at square one all over again. So it really blurs the lines for me, because I think Kevin is connected in a lot of ways with himself and self-discovery and stuff like that. I really admire a lot of things that he talks about, but I see he was used for a certain agenda. And to me, that's undeniable. It's so obvious. But, when you start, that doesn't mean that, we don't all find ourselves, because we do. We all kind of wake up at different periods and this and that. But, when you're at the end of the road and the love thing comes up, that's where you lose me, Kevin. That's where... it just kind of seems like it's like a cheap answer. Like, oh, all this stuff is out there, and I'm not really trying to rank on you, Kevin, if you do listen to this, but it's a cheap explanation that kind of goes along with a lot of what is out there with the spiritual communities, and it just doesn't fit at all. It doesn't fit. It fits in the context if you're going to be stuck and contained within this whole matrix system. And that, I personally think love doesn't even exist outside of this whole matrix system. I think we're just we're down to a pure form of existence of just observing and being, no distractions, just being. Think about, I'll bring this up. They're not going to go too much longer and rant will continue. But, the one thing that always sticks out in my head are the mothers out there who have children, and they'll, some before they even deal with the light. Okay. I'm talking about those who haven't even been interfered with yet. They'll say, where I was outside of my body can't, it's amazing. Like, I'm just this pure existent state. And then you have the other mothers who will say that, the love they received at the light and from certain entities was more than they can ever compare back to on earth. But there is also that state, that full self-awareness, contentness, where you are just kind of being. You just are, without all the interference, all the distractions, the infiltration, and you just are who you are. That's where the difference kind of falls in line with this. And I'm transcending the whole love thing. And I'm sorry, you are loved implies there's some other being out there that really loves and cares about us and is looking out for Earth and us as individuals and as a group. And that's just not the case. I'm sorry.
You can't be anything other than that. And that has no form. And it's okay. It's fine. Then you need to know what really matters to you. Do you need that big house? Do you need that job? COVID woke up a lot of people. And they said, maybe I don't need to live in New York City for $6,000 a month for a little tiny room. Maybe I don't need that stress. Maybe I can downsize, So you figure out what really matters. You follow your dreams. You want to be a potter? Learn pottery. There's ways to do it. Even if you don't have money, there's ways to do it. Then you need to know why. So you need to know what really matters. You need to know why it matters. And you need to have a game plan that works. If you have all of those things, that's great. But you need to know about feeling it and what to do when you're thrown off the surfboard in life and how to balance. And that's why I wrote this course that's coming out. I think it's going to be July 4th it's released, but we're going to do like a little pre-sale thing, especially for the folks listening if they're interested, is I teach this. Now, I do this professionally. I mean, I have clients that pay me, to do this for private sessions, but I can't talk to everybody. So I made this online course with Teachable. So it's kevinroth.teachable.com that explains this whole general theory of what to do. And at least it'll get you thinking about it, because if I could reject cancer, and I'm not saying that everyone who has cancer can just say, be gone, and it'll be gone. Everyone has their thing that they got to go through. But I really changed my life around because I said, I'm not doing this anymore. But sometimes they call it in maybe 12-step programs, hitting bottom. You can do it now. You don't need to hit bottom. Sometimes it takes hitting bottom. But that's what I suggest people to do, is to follow their gut, be kind to yourself, give yourself some me time. You can take my course, read other books, watch more of your shows. The message is pretty clear throughout all your podcasts. Chill out. It's okay. There's something really beautiful happening here. Mm-hmm. That's the best advice I could give quickly.
Thank you for that. Now, you said you made a spiritual album. Is it dulcimer with singing about spiritual concepts?
Well, Noel loved an album I made called Awakenings. And it was, that was an album that was questioning everything. And another one of these OBE things, he called me up while he was driving home and he was listening to it in his car. And he said, hey, I have an idea. Let's do an album with dulcimer, songs from Awakening, write some new songs, and let's put synthesizer behind it. So he had this concept. So I wrote that album. It has a lot of spiritual questions. The weirdest thing about that record, Jeff, was I think 3 days after I finished writing it is when I got my cancer diagnosis. I would have never been able to write it because I was so freaked out at that time. So it had already been finished. And it's called Reawakenings. I think you can find it on Amazon. It's one of the more unusual records. I think my last record, The Deviant Dulcimerist, has a song on there called Adrift. which speaks about everything I've just talked about. And that's a fun album that's got a lot of stuff. But I try and avoid spiritual and religious, because, I mean, I wasn't raised Christian, but I'd love to sit down with Jesus. What a hippie, what a great kind of character,
Well, I'm just going to throw this out there, and I don't expect you to do what I ask or do what I say. And I rarely talk about myself, but I'll say this, that a few years ago I had, probably more than that, 5-6 years ago, I had terrible acid reflux. And I did, I did the medical route and the alternative route, and I got better, but I never really got over the hump until I would start every night. I would go on YouTube and I found something, brain healing music. And I would listen to it as I would go to bed. And it was just kind of, it's kind of ambient music. And even today, I still listen to the kind of stuff that's like binaural beats and stuff like that. And I believe that there's a lot of stuff that you can do at putting your brain into a certain frequency that is healing for you. And actually, that's what finally healed me, was listening to that music every night.
Yeah, binaural beats, they're called. And I did an album with the sounds of the ocean behind it called ODYSEE Meditation.
Oh, that's where I was going. Yeah, if you ever...
Yeah. That's the last album I did. In fact, in this teaching series on Teachable, I play a little ODYSEE meditation and teach a breathing exercise to kind of calm down and to do that. And, more and more people are playing the dulcimer. And it's a super easy instrument to play. So I have a feeling, this is the Wink. This is a dulcimer that I actually came up with the design with a friend. It's kind of cosmic. And I teach this to people. And, it's got a really...
And for those that kind of just came in, you can see how Saturn's on there. I'm just saying, you also have obviously a shooting star, you have stars, and I think you have a crescent moon.
And I teach this to people. And, it's got a really pretty...
Almost looks like a little COVID action there, too.
sound to it. And it's very, I can't, because you play it on your lap, but, So, you do that for a while. That's why I'm so chilled out. And my dog is like super chill, And you don't even it's not as hard as the guitar or the piano. It's just really easy. So I created this cosmic dulcimer for people to purchase, or if they want to learn or whatever, how to play a musical instrument. The neat thing about playing an instrument versus listening to an instrument is that you feel the vibrations of the wood on your body. And that really makes, I think, a difference. Musically, I've actually fallen asleep to my own ODYSEE meditation, which is how I knew it kind of worked. Either that or I was terribly bored.
But what would be amazing is if you knew you could play something that when you were playing the music, it would cause you to have an OBE.
Well, I do have them, because when I can't sleep at night, I've got 16 dulcimers here. There's one I take off the wall and I play it. And, the OBE thing is that you're not here and you're not there. It's not like I feel like I'm in my body or out of my body, but I'm someplace. I'm not, I don't sense myself. I sense this thing that's going on mentally, or this cosmic screen.
Cosmic screen. It's mentally, so it's interesting, right?
And if I can't sleep, I'll lullaby myself to sleep with an instrumental. It doesn't take long. And when I do ODYSEE meditation every morning, I'm taken out of my head. And I'm like, one day I was doing it and I had a whole list of things to do. And the experience kind of said, go buy flowers, which I don't ever do. But by the time I went and got the flowers and I came back, everything that was a huge deal to me was gone. So I've learned, I guess I'm just so accustomed to weird stuff happening in my life that I just naturally do this, but it's teachable. It really is teachable. It's simple. That's what I teach people is just simple,
Have you ever had an intense experience while playing your dulcimer that it's almost, I guess, like an OBE where you felt like you became the music.
I can't say I did. I had one experience where I thought I was going to pass out. I never had stage fright, and I totally surrendered because I thought I'm going to be hitting the floor anytime soon. But I've never had an experience like what you're talking about. However, when I perform, you have to read an audience. So if you have a set list of songs and, you want to put a few slow ones in there, but you sense from the audience that they're ready to be up, you have to know that. So you have to feel the audience and you have to change your music. An old Pete Seeger and Peter Paul Mary trick and other tricks of other performers are not really tricks, but you want a standing ovation, have them sing with you, have them clap with you, make it about them, and that's one of the great things about this whole experience is that, a career is like, especially a music career, it's kind of full of ego, never really did me much, but I don't have any reason to really have much of an ego. Not that I don't have one, but it's like, now if I play, I play. If I don't, I don't. It's about everybody else. And that's the joyful thing about it. And, I'm new at this. I'm just beginning to learn about this. There's no end to understanding what this consciousness is or isn't. There's just no end to it. So I'm always a student of this stuff. And I'll tell you one thing that I did learn is when you look at things, let's say you're reading something spiritual, whatever it is, and you're really into it, when you go back and read it, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like I've read the same book and I teach from certain books. I've read them, I don't know, a lot. And each time it's like I've never read it before. So really, what is going on? Mm-hmm. I think the idea, instead of getting out of where I am and going into an OBE, is to just kind of stay in an OBE as much as you can, light in a light way. And, the expression I guess from the Bible, have one foot in the world and one, what's this, something about having a foot on the planet or 1 foot out. Be in the world, but not of it. Mm. That's pretty much it. Mm. And realize that we don't know what this is.
Yeah. That's so true. I just want to give a big thank you to AA for the $2 super chat. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Very much appreciated. Thank you for your continued support.
Do you dabble at all in the hammered dulcimer?
The dabbler.
I do. I don't like hammered dulcimer when it's played with mallets, but I had one and I was tuning it. And as I was tuning it, the resonance of it kind of took me out. And I called a person who makes hammered dulcimers and I said, do you think we could make a wink hammered dulcimer? So there is on my website, kevinroth.org, or Kevin Roth Music, one or the other. There's pictures of the hammered dulcimer and the mountain dulcimer. And what's very strange is someone recently called me up and asked me to write music for a horror film. Why would you think I would write music for a horror film?
Yeah.
But I was playing on the hammered dulcimer and I started to mute the strings and then boom, 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 boom. And I thought, oh, that's spooky. So the way I look at it is like, I don't know, someone's asked me to write a horror film, that's kind of cool, no weirder than predicting my own death and someone dying with my name, So I follow it. But the intention is different because it's written about an insane asylum where people were mistreated. So when I create the music, it's in a healing sense, as sort of an offering to those poor souls who had to go through what they went through. So, it's not the slash and dagger thing. It's sort of like a sneaky, spooky healing thing. I'm not a great hammered dulcimer player, though, but I have one.
That's cool. It sounds like you have 2 websites. I'm assuming one is for your music and one is for your classes.
Well, I actually have 3 now. The music career is, you could type in Kevin Roth and I pop up on iTunes and Wikipedia and all this stuff. That's KevinRothMusic.com. And then the teaching, coaching thing that I do, the personal consulting is KevinRoth.org. And then I've just launched on this platform called Teachable, where people can take a course online, is kevinroth.teachable.com. And there's a sale going on for a couple of weeks. I don't know whenever people are seeing this. It may be a month from now and the sale's over. I don't know. But you can sign up for it at a discount. But it's not very expensive anyway, you know. So those are the three. And you can find the Teachable on the link for that, probably maybe on your thing below here, maybe. But it's on kevinroth.org as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually put links, and I'll put a link to your websites in the description.
Okay.
All right. Well, before we finish up here, do you have one last positive message that you can share with everybody?
There's hope.
There's hope.
Think good thoughts and good things will happen. It's change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And that there's help. You know, if you're depressed, man, they've got therapists. They've got programs. If you're not feeling well, there are people who care. And know that you're loved. Know that there are people who care, but you don't know about it until you put it out there.
You don't know about it until either A, you're aware that it's possible, and B, well, aware it's possible, and then they just happen to guide you and put you in a certain scenario that is to the overall benefit of either them or the entire matrix system in general. But come on. I think I missed my second point. There was a second point I was going to make. Let me see here.
Feeling well, there are people who care. And know that you're loved. Know that there are people who care, but you don't know about it until you put it out there. And then people show up and they say, I'm there. Everything is follow your gut, follow your heart, and just know that you're loved. I think that's the clearest thing, and that this is just a dream.
Okay, the one thing I do want to say about the gut, yes, a lot of times it does not do you wrong. But I think a big problem, and I would imagine a lot of us can admit this, is I've gone with my gut, and that kind of falls in the lines of, take what resonates and leave the rest, like especially when you're trying to unravel this sick reality. And you will find yourselves, I know we've talked about this a lot, but it's just something that needs to be said. You will find times when you connect with certain information on a huge scale, and it will feel like, you resonate with it. Okay. Your intuition is, running amok, and you're connecting with it. So the other problem is that there are times when you can feel that way and it's not the truth. It's not accurate. And so sure, at the time you may resonate and connect with something intuitively, but then later on you may go back to that, because I think the most important thing is that those views that we hold dearly, those beliefs or inner knowings, whatever classification they are, I think those things are what deserve the most scrutiny. And you should be able to go back to something that you hold dear and reevaluate it. And if new information does come about, you should be able to continue on with that thought and put it to the test. And it should pass that test. If it fails or something massive comes along to shut that down, then you just need to be honest with yourself and say, hey, okay, yeah, maybe like a year or two ago, I connected with something and it was a big thing. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of crap that I connected with and thought was legit, like completely, I was all in on it, only to later find out it was a huge, huge scam. Some of it's extremely embarrassing, and I won't even talk about it, but the point is it is what it is, but later on you find out and prove to yourself that no, it's the bullshit that I was signing on to before is completely unfounded and out to lunch. So just remember, I mean, that there are still limitations within this body. I don't like to, I'm not trying to put out any sort of negative vibe with that, because it's all about empowering ourselves. But I really think existence here in general, over time, year by year, as we kind of creep into topics related to truth and spirituality and finding ourselves, I think, we're confronted with a huge amount of information. And a lot of that stuff early on is surface level. And we kind of have to fine tune our discernment skills through the years. And I seriously feel, at least for me personally, over that time, I've gotten better and better with it, but I'm by no means perfect. And I'm sure, just with some of the experiencer cases that I've talked about, there's probably a few out there who I connected with and felt were legitimate, only to, I mean, there's no way to really find out who's telling the truth and who isn't, but it's all about the collective of data. That's the great thing about all the soul trap research you can do on this. I mean, there's so many different experiencer accounts out there because we're so fortunate to be in this time to be able to research this stuff and have access to so much data. So that's the great part of it. This isn't like some bullshit thing that you might hear someone talk about and truth and it can't really be backed up, but it feels right and this and that, and then you just kind of move on, but say, I remember that thing, I'm gonna keep looking into it, and then you're not really gaining any more further information on the topic, and it kind of just runs stagnant. Whereas with the soul trap stuff, there is so much information that it's in my opinion, it's completely undeniable what's going on here. And but over the years, again, the discernment meter picks up, it gets better, and we do better for ourselves as a result of that. But it's a tough road. It really is.
That's a great message. Thank you, Kevin, for sharing that with us. And thank you again for being my guest. I really appreciate you. And
all right. So that was a hell of an account. And I want to thank again the JeffMara Podcast for furnishing that video and putting it out to the public. There's some great content over on that channel. If you want to do some research for your own needs, you can find a lot of experiencer interviews there. And he usually asks some really good questions. And he lets people talk and kind of get out their experience. It's great. So feel free to swing by and check him out sometime. For your own research purposes. And I just want to say to those who are members of the Last Timers Club, we will be having our monthly members live stream next Sunday. That's the 26th of June, 2022 at 4 p.m. Eastern. So that's June 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern. For the monthly members live stream, levels 2 and 3. And if you're interested in getting a little added extra content each month, feel free to check out the Last Timers Club membership levels and the perks that come along with them. And then I also have a Stream Elements account. If you'd like to send a tip or a donation to the channel, it'd be very much appreciated. But again, I always like to say I'm all about putting out information for free, but still got to live in a little ways and get by in this place, and every little bit helps. So those that you are able to, very much appreciated, but of course it's never expected. And I also have 2 YouTube backup channels just in case something should ever happen here. And I know again, based on the poll we took a week or so back, about 30% of you are not receiving notifications. The best thing I could suggest is to hit the bell and select all, not personalized or none, and that way you'll get the 2 or 3 notifications a week for when we go live. And I also post announcements usually on Twitter and Instagram about an hour before, sometimes a little more depending on if I'm prepared and able to do so. And then also the Discord server, if you'd like to join us in there, I put out announcements and notifications sometimes, for the weekend or day by day, depending on how things are going and all that stuff. And we do have a voice chat after the stream. So if you'd like to come and join us in the voice chat for the Discord, feel free to swing by. Jimmy just popped up the link in there. And I thank each and every one of you. I also have an ODYSEE account. So if you'd like to check out ODYSEE, there's some content over there. And I do plan to do a few exclusive live streams there and also on DLIVE. And once in a great while, I'll play video games on Twitch too. So if you're over on Twitch, feel free to check it out. And much love and blessings. I hope you all have a great week ahead and don't work too hard. Don't overthink things. And remember, sovereignty and liberation is the answer. And I will see you all again real soon. Thank you so much.